Proteins are very important because proteins are what basically is responsible for phenotype. It's not encoding phenotype, but it actually makes phenotype happen. And remember that phenotype is basically everything there is about an organism other than what's literally encoded in its DNA, other than the genetic material. So there's also something to understand about proteins, and that is proteins are little machines that are very precise, and the way they function is entirely dependent upon the number and order of amino acids that make up the polypeptides that underlie the proteins. And it's the order and number of amino acids that is encoded by genes. This is something we'll get to when we start talking about genetics. But if you change the order or function, the types of amino acids in there and the order of the amino acids that are in there, then you are going to potentially change the function of the protein. And often that change will be for the worse. Occasionally it improves things. So the proteins, they consist of amino acids, and we'll look at what those are. And the amino acids are tied together via something known as peptide bonds into these chains. This would be a very short chain of amino acids. This here is a bit longer, but still relatively short as far as polypeptides go. But this is a linear chain all folded back upon itself, but a linear chain of amino acids, with each of the circles is an individual amino acid. And then here I've depicted 1, 2, 3 polypeptides all interacting with one another and also interacting with something else, which is what the box is representing. And when you get something that consists of polypeptides and potentially other things, and it could be one polypeptide, it could be many, but if it's a functional something, if it actually can do something, then we call it a protein. So we have amino acids. Those are the subunits that make up proteins. The polymers, when they're tiny, they're called peptides, but typically they're called polypeptides. The polypeptides fold in specific ways, and these ways, in fact, are specified by the order of amino acids in them. And then the polypeptides either can work alone as proteins or require other substances in order to be functional proteins, or require both other substances and other polypeptides in order to be functional proteins. So there's a great, huge diversity in terms of what proteins are like. And this is because they vary in terms of the length of the polypeptides, the amino acids making up the polypeptides, the order of the amino acids making up the polypeptides, the number of polypeptides that interact together in order to form proteins, and additional non-polypeptide things that interact with the polypeptides to form functional proteins. So huge diversity.